14. And some of you that hated history and geography are really going to want to run out of here to your secret place. Because this is all about geography. This is all about what happened with 5 kings versus 4 kings. But what I want you to think about from the get-go is a word called redemption. Redemption is when you are, or I are, or any ours, are being rescued from terror and trouble. And in our case, I want you to think about rescue, redemption. So as we look at this, think about the redemption that takes place and all that is being done. There's something called a kinsman redeemer in the Old Testament. What that meant was someone could redeem if there was a male that had relatives or had an investment in a property. He had the right to go redeem that property, to do whatever it was, to spend money to purchase it, to take it, to marry the woman, the widow that owned that property. If you read the book of Ruth, phenomenal story of the kinsman redeemer in a guy named Boaz, who eventually brings us Christ Jesus. Not Boaz, but through his line and through Ruth. So it's interesting, very, very interesting. So we're going to read, and this is not a reading lesson either, but let's pray and let's note here, Ryan spoke last week, Kurt spoke last week, Ryan was 2 weeks ago, and we looked at chapter 13. And in chapter 13, there is a redemption in that regard because Abram is removed from Egypt. He leaves Egypt. He gets out of that issue that he's in, and his wife, they're safe. And so we get into chapter 14, and remember Abram and Lot have separated, right? Remember they had this both of them had huge flocks, and all their guys were doing fisticuffs on the weekends. You know, they had the fight club because they were over the wells and all the 9 yards that's going on there. So they're fighting, and Abram says to Lot, he says, look, pick a place. Place is too big, pick some place. And he is relying on God. Abraham, soon to be Abraham, is relying on God to make the provision, whatever that's going to be. He's not worried about it. So he says to Lot, or Hebrew Lut, he says to Lot, look around, where do you want to go? And so he does this, he does the Tonto thing and looks out, and there he goes. And he sees this beautiful piece of property, lush green, and he says, I want that. He didn't account for Sodom and Gomorrah that were there, but they knew of the people that lived in that particular area and how vile they were and wicked. But nonetheless, he chose to be a part of that group. So Lot separates, and it looks like things are going to be okay. Abram's still getting along well. He is prospering, and we're going to see just how much he prospers. So we have peace in the land for how long? Maybe a few years, not a very long time. Because there's a couple of names. One of them is a guy by the name of, Kedorlaomer. And he is a great king, the leader of the 5 kings, and he is going out, he is coming down, because what's going on is there's 4 kings in the Sodom-Gomorrah area, and they are under the obligation to pay these 5 kings every year. They have to pay them money. So they do it for 13 years. And on the 13th year, rolling into the 14th, they all get together and they go, we're not doing this anymore. Okay, so this is a bad idea. I'll show you why. That's where we're at this point. So let's look at this part. So here's the question I asked. I said, who's in charge? I always want to know who's in charge. I always want to know who's in charge. Most of the time, I hope it's me, but I want to know who's in charge. So I want to know, I don't know if it's because I want to know who to blame or what, but I want to know who's in charge. And so the question is, who's in charge here? Who's in charge of what's going on in chapter 14? Well, if you don't know already, you're going to hear it. So there's a calm before the storm, and the power of this Chedorlaomer's army is so phenomenal that they are wiping everybody out. They're just destroying everything that's in their path. And so there is a rebellion that's beginning. And this is, it's like I wrote up there, it's like the guys are going, we got this. Is that better? Does that help at all? So we got this. Don't worry about this. We can, he's only 5 kings. We got 4 of us. We're powerful and you're idiots. So human frailties as they surrender to sin. Remember the wickedness. They're in Canaan. And Canaan is the area that was, that Noah, or that Noah's son was Canaan, his son. No, back. Noah's son, Ham's son, Canaan. Okay, there we go. Now we got it. He was cursed by Noah instead of Ham. And that was an interesting story. You have to go back and look at that. We don't have time this evening for that. But so I wrote, human frailties are surrendered to sin. And that's what's going on here in Canaan. There is tremendous sin. And you'll see just how bad it is shortly. And then I wrote, oops, bad idea, always haunt you. And then this place is the pits. So we're going to see what that means. What does that mean, this place is the pits? I'm glad you asked. Let's find out. So here we are, map, hard to read. You can't hardly see it. So let's see if I can do something with this bad boy. Is that better? This is where you say, das ist better. All right, I had football players that used to speak that way. And I let them because they were really, really good athletes. Okay, just carry the ball and crush somebody. So, chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemember, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, which is Zoar. So let's look at, we just said these guys right here. See that? Right in the middle, it says the valley of Siddim. And then you have Sodom, Gomorrah, Bela, Admah, and Zeboim. Each of those are 4 kings, or four kings that are attacking, or going to attack the 5 kings that are attacking. You say, wait a minute, there's 5 names there. We'll explain that. So here's this big picture. So we have this issue right here. Now, all the way up in this upper right-hand corner, you see the red arrow and you see Damascus, right? You guys can see that? Okay. So you got Damascus. So these 5 kings are really upset, particularly this Chedorlaomer. He is really upset because he leads this entourage of the other 4 kings. And so he decides they're coming down. They're going to come down above Damascus. They're way up past in Syria. They're coming down, and on the way down, follow the blue line, they come down, and we're going to talk about each of those nations that they go down. And they don't just destroy them. They don't just beat them up and take their stuff. They leave them with nothing. So let's look again at verses 1 through 4. Genesis 14, 1 through 4. In the days of the northeastern kings, Amraphel, Shinar, Arioch, Eleazar, Chedorlaomer of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations, they invade the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea. So that is Dead Sea. Whoops, Dead Sea's missing. Let's bring the Dead Sea up. There she is, Dead Sea. So they're coming down this blue line as they're coming down. Now look at the names. Watch these names as we read them, as they come down. Follow the blue line over there on the right side, the Rephaims and the Zumims, all those guys. So the valley near the Dead Sea, and made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemember, king of Zeboim, and King Bela, which is Zoar. All these kings joined together as allies in the valley of Siddim, that is the Sea of Salt. 12 years they'd serve Chedorlaomer, and most powerful king of that invading army. So for 12 years they're serving him, and then they decide against it. So here they come down, and they're going through Ashtoreth, the Zumims, the Rephaims, Rabbah, Kirjahaim, the Emims, the Amorites, and so on. So we're going to read all those names. But I want you to get, this is close to like 300 miles that they're going. And as they go, they wipe out everything. This is General Sherman scorched earth policy with the South. There's nothing left. And I'm going to read you something that'll, hopefully it'll blow your mind like it did mine. So the most powerful northeastern kings under the leadership of Chedorlaomer had forced the kings of the Jordan Valley to pay tribute. So the 13th year of their tribute, they rebelled. Remember I said, not a good idea? Bad idea. Oh, we got this, guys. No, we don't got this. So they go down. They come down south, and they gather the gold, the silver, the horses, the women, the dogs. They gather everything, and they take it with them, or they kill them. They leave nothing. They completely destroy everything in their path. Now remember I said redemption. What is going to redeem them? What is all these people? They're reaching out. Does that sound familiar to you before you came to Christ? Everything was destroyed. You were beaten up and left for dead. And now there's going to be a change. Something's going to happen. You're going to change. Your life changes. Dr. Henry Morris of the Creation Institute in San Diego writes this. Dr. Nelson Gluck, that is the name of an archaeologist and a Palestinian archaeologist, particularly for that area, writes, he says, centuries earlier, another civilization of high achievement had flourished between the 21st and 19th century BCs, till it was savagely liquidated by the kings of the East. That's what we're looking at, these guys that are coming from up above Damascus. So these 5 kings were savagely liquidating the kings of the East, according to the biblical statements which have been borne out by archaeological evidence. So this isn't some guy writing. This is when they find archaeological evidence, they're able to say, okay, the scripture is right. This evidence shows that what they're saying in the Word of God is true. You and I would say, well, that's, I get that. So he goes on. They gutted every city and village at the end of that period from Ashtaroth Kirjanim, right here, that's where, right there on the right where it says Ashtaroth. And then you have Ham, the Zumims, just by this King's Highway. Watch the names now. Ashtaroth in southern Syria through all of the Transjordan and the Negev, the south, to Kadesh Barnea in Sinai. The people living in Canaan in those days, all these people were similar in ideals and somewhat purposes. Follow this line now as we go down. Look at all those names that we named, the Emims, and go down and follow it all the way down on the south side, or excuse me, on the east side of Sodom and Gomorrah. So you have the hills there that are protecting Sodom, Gomorrah, and all that valley there. The mountains are protecting them, and they're coming down, and they're destroying everything on this side, on the east side. They're leaving nothing. They're leaving nothing but stones and dead people. Hey, so in verse 5 we read, in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the 3 kings who were with him attacked and subdued the Rephaim in Ashtaroth. You can find them? You see those guys? Rephaim. Now, the thing that's interesting in this is this was likely, the Rephaim and the Zuzims were very likely, according to biblical archaeology, were the giants, the second set of giants after the flood. There was more giants that were there, and this was a wiping out of these giants. So how powerful were the armies that they're able to go through these places and destroy the giants and all the people? They kill them all. They wipe all the nations are wiped out. So verse 5 says, in the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the 3 kings who were with him attacked and subdued the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Kirnaim and Zuzim in Ham. There's Zuzims, the Zuzites. There are the Zuzim people. And the Horites in their mountain country of Seir as far as El Paran. So follow the blue line, and we get to Zeboim, and then we cross over the Putnun, and then we get to Im Mishpat, and then we go to El Paran, which he just said, and then they make a right turn and head back north again. So they're wiping everything out. And they're taking all this booty, all this gold and silver and jewels, and what they can't carry, I'm not gold and silver they carry, the human beings they can't carry, they dispose of. So they leave death and destruction in their path all the way through there. So what does that have to do with biblical knowledge? And what are we going to gather from this? God put it there, something big is about to happen, and we're going to see redemption here. Verse 7 says, then in verse 7 he says, then they turned back and came to En Mishpat. So we see that right there on the left-hand side, right? So we're following them on this journey. And subdued all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who lived in Hazeron Tamar. So as we move up, there's the Amalekites and there's Hazeron Tamar right in the middle of the square. See him? Hazeron Tamar. They went all the way up there. And so they're wiping all this up. Beersheba and just south of Hebron. And Hebron is where, guess who lives? Abraham. He lives there with some others that are confederate with him. But they go under him. Why do you suppose that is? Why not go to Hebron and destroy that? There's wealth there. God says, make a right turn right here. Don't go to Hebron, make a right turn. I'm not. So here they go. So they get over to Hazeron Tamar. They have a battle and wipe those guys out, and then they head back south, and they get into the slime pits. They get into that area there. And the next thing that happens, let's read on. Let's see, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela, that is Zoar, came out. So the 4 kings that refused to pay the tariffs come out and they fight. And so they are these red dots. They're the red dots there. Okay, they're coming up and they're gathering together, which is a really bad idea because they're outnumbered, but they don't know that yet. And they head up and they meet at the Salt Sea. They meet to the south of the Dead Sea. So they're there. Now, the valley of Siddim is full of tar, which is bitumen or bitumen pits. That's why I said this is really the pits. And as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, they fell into them. But the remainder of the kings who survived fled to the hill country. So if you look at the hill country here, here's these pits, right? You get to see. There we go. You see the pit, right? And you see the explosion there? That's where they fought. Well, they lose. And so they fall into these pits, and then you can see where Sodom and Gomorrah, the mountains behind there. So they run and they hide in the caves. So what happens from there then is Sodom and Gomorrah are taken captive, right? They're destroyed. The kings go out to fight, and then the 5 kings come in and they pillage Sodom, Gomorrah, Bela, Admah, and so on. They take all of their stuff. And guess who they took? Bad mistake. They took Lot. And that really made Abraham unhappy. He was an unhappy camper. So what is he going to do? So 4 kings under the direction of Chedorlaomer attack and defeat the nations, and then the power of the armies is so amazing that no one can stop them. And then we're going to jump to verses 11 through 12. So we finished, let's go to verse 11, and we're going to put this guy to rest here. But before we put him to rest, I want you to see this line. See the red line here? It starts at Hebron, and it goes up to Dan. What you're going to see is this is anywhere between 120 and 200 plus miles that Abram goes to rescue Lot, because these guys are off and gone. They take off and they head up the dotted line there. The dotted blue line is them heading. This is the 5 kings from Jericho. They're heading up, and they're heading up to Damascus. So they get to Dan. They're headed home. Now we were able to go to Dan and see what Dan was like when we were in Israel. But that is the northernmost part of Israel proper today. So they're way up there. And Abram follows these guys all the way up to Dan. Now the red line, notice there's a battle point there. You see the star, the red star with a square in it. There's a battle point. That's where our buddy Abram meets with this indestructible, invincible army. And we're going to see what happens. And then the red line continues. He actually wins the battle. I guess I'm spoiling the punchline, but he wins the battle, but he doesn't just quit there. He goes, "You clowns, get out of here." And so he chases them all the way up, back home. They're turned tail and running out of there as Abram goes back to get them. And he continues to chase them. He doesn't just get away, "Okay, I got Lot, that's all I want." Because you guys are getting out of my country. I'm not putting up with you. You're done. You're gone. And so he chases. Isn't that cool? Yes. It's like, wait a second. So he is redeeming his country as well. Come on. Get out of here. All right, there we go. Let me see if I can make this guy smaller. Really? Guess I can't. Now you can't see it. There we go. Is that better? Well, not really, but. Okay, so they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. They took Lot, Abram's brother, son, who dwelt in Sodom. They took everything, and then they headed back home. So this is an interesting point. Watch this. Charles Spurgeon makes this note. Those believers who conform to the world must expect to suffer the consequences. Okay, I shake my head and I think, well, pretty amazing. I was listening several months ago when the riots were in Los Angeles, when the ICE agents were down there. And there was a lady, and she was trying to sue I think it was the group that, the National Guard. She wanted to sue the National Guard because her child got shot. And you're going, wait a second. Why do you have a 4-year-old at a riot? If you're going to go to a riot and they're shooting bullets, you should expect to get shot. If you're a Christian and you're hanging out with people who aren't, you're going to stumble. You must have accountability, and that's where is your salvation? It's not in the world. It's apart from the world. Yes, we live in a world, and we're told to continue to share the gospel and the truth because we live in the world, but we're not to be a part of the world. And so that's That's a picture of what goes on, one of the pictures of what goes on when that type of thing takes place. So, who's in charge? Hanging around holes. I wrote this for myself. Hanging around holes, Bob, and you'll eventually fall in one. Well, that's wise. You know, if you're walking around holes, you're eventually going to fall. I noted that when I used to jump rocks when I was fishing. And it was just a matter of time. You know, I go, I can probably make that rock. I go, and that was when I could actually jump more than 4 inches. And I would make the rock. And then you get on the rock and you got a fishing pole and your bag and you're going, oh, dude. And you're going to step off or fall back. Well, you're going to step off and pretty soon you are wet. So the rescue operations are about to take place. Abraham's army is how big? 318 folks. Now, you got to understand, why would Abraham have 318 trained warriors in his entourage of people? These are trained warriors. These are guys who are fit. They're the Navy SEALs of Abram SEALs. And they're ready to rock and rumble. They have weapons, they're trained, and they're ready. So their protection, Abraham has thought ahead, or Abram has thought ahead. Are you thinking ahead? What is your protection? Are you prayed up? You may not have an army or guns and all that kind of stuff, but your weapon is the Word of God that lives in you. And you take that with you wherever you go. You put on the full armor of God, and you take that with you, and now you're prepared. You have an army of more than 318. So the kinsman redeemer we spoke about at the beginning is a guy by the name of Abram. He's also called the Hebrew. So we're going to spend a couple minutes looking at that. So back to verse 11 through 12. So verse 11 through 12 says this, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals, all their food, this is King James, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and they departed. So they cut and run. They're out of there now. They've got everything they think they can have, but they forgot something. They made a mistake when they took Lot. When you are following God, when your heart is there and you're praying up, God's not real happy with those who try to take you. If you allow yourself to be taken, if you're hanging around, then it's different because that's your fault. But he will not. You know, look at Israel. Look at Israel. Those who bless Israel are blessed. Those who curse Israel, those who speak wickedly or evil of Israel are punished. They're cursed. The word curse is different. I would encourage you to look that up. But they're punished physically, spiritually, and mentally as a result of denying God. When you have God in your life, God is over you. It doesn't mean you're not going to die or things aren't going to go wrong, but you know that God is there, and He is your hope. He is your shield. He is your purpose. So again, let's go back and let's look. I thought this was interesting. I thought you would enjoy this. Dr. Nelson Gluck writes this in regard to the rebellion that took place. The rebellion of the small kings, that would be the Sodom and Gomorrah, the 4 kings, the 5 kings of the cities, east side of the Dead Sea, against what must have been the extortionate. So he's pretty intelligent, way over my head. But he's talking about the extortion. They're trying to get this money out of them. And these guys, these kings, decide they're not going to pay it, right? So the rule of absentee sovereign state leadership that was there, that was not together, and their unwillingness to pay the fees was brutally crushed. This is what he writes. This comparatively minor insurrection, not paying the tax, this comparative minor insurrection was thereupon utilized as a pretext old scores. I don't know what to think about that. I guess that was the speaker. You don't know? All right, I don't know either. Watch it. That happens again, we're leaving. So it was brutally crushed. They crushed them. Comparatively minor insurrection thereupon, utilized as a pretext to settle old scores and to raid and revenge with unleashed ferocity. Now watch this. For as much booty as could possibly be won, and the old order was crumbling. From southern Syria to the central Sinai, their fury raged. This is all through archaeological discoveries. A punitive expedition developed into an orgy of annihilation. I found that every village in their path had been plundered and left in ruins, and the countryside laid waste. The population had been wiped out or led away into captivity. For hundreds of years thereafter, the entire area was like an abandoned cemetery, hideously unkempt, with all its monuments shattered and strewn in pieces all over the ground. Something, is that me? You don't know? I'll get it up higher. Okay. All right, so if it does it again, you'll have somebody redeem you. 5 kings are victorious, defeating 4 kings, causing them to have lots of trouble. So Lot, Abram's nephew, is taken along with his possessions. And as we said before, Spurgeon writes this: those believers who conform to the world must expect to suffer with the world. So if you're in the world, you're going to suffer with it. So I won't go into all my arguments about why people do what they do or where they should live. That's up to them. So I don't know if that's a lot better or not, but Abram pursues Lot's captors to the far north in Dan. What am I doing?
We're going to switch the mics.
Thank you. So what do I...
Yeah, just to
take this off? Hello? Okay. All right, Abraham pursues Lot's captors to the far north by Dan. We looked at that. Abram divides his forces and attacks the 5 kings. So he has 318 guys compared to an army of 5 kings that have wiped every single person, including giants, out on the way down, north, south, east, and west. No one has been able to stop them. And so Abram takes off after these guys with 318 folks. Now, this is almost like Joshua. Moses is gone, and Joshua is taken over. And God says, okay, get the priests, put them in the front, and cross the Jordan. Well, the Jordan is overflowing its banks. And God tells blank, Joshua, God tells Joshua, oh, brother, this is great. You get to see me at my best. So God tells Joshua, he says, when the priest's foot touches the water, I'll part the waters. So Joshua's going, sure, okay. So he tells the priest, and he tells all the boys there from Israel, he goes, okay, guys, as soon as the priest's foot hits the water that's overflowing its banks, now I'm leading you, the water's going to part. And everybody's going, you ain't Moses, Holmes. I don't know if I'm believing this. But Joshua believed it, and he took the confidence, and he did what he was asked to do, and the waters parted, and the priests as well. So 13 and 14, verses 13 and 14. And there came one that had escaped. So there's this escape of the destruction of the Sodom and Gomorrah kings, and these northern 5 kings, and someone survived that. And so he comes down and he finds Abram. And then came one that escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them for almost 200 miles. So he was bound and determined that he was going to redeem and bring back, no matter what the cost. He was taking himself out of his comfort zone and going to a place far away to fight a battle against kings that seemed like they were invincible and insurmountable. Who did that for and does that for you? Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ the Messiah, leaves his own home, takes everything he has with him, doesn't have a great contingency of army, but he is powerful and he's not afraid. Abram is not afraid of what's going on, and we're going to see him just in a few seconds here. He's not only going to take 318, he's going to divide him in half. So Abram hears about the capture of his nephew and immediately begins the rescue operations. So do not miss the significance of this. So the name, he is also called the Hebrew. So this is the first mention of the term Hebrew. So let's take just a minute and find out what a Hebrew is. So the word Hebrew in the Hebrew language is Ivri. And Ivri means, it's a root letter which means to cross over or to pass through. So would you say that the Hebrews crossed over and passed through? So they're known specifically as those who cross over, those that pass through, and those from perhaps even from the north. So there's a lot of information. I won't bore you with it, but I would really encourage you to take a look at it. I'm going to read a short piece of Joshua chapter 24, and I would give you this, Joshua chapter 24, beginning in verse 3. You're going to see a representation. God is speaking to Joshua about this, about the Hebrews, about what a Hebrew is. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, long ago your fathers lived beyond the Euphrates, Terah, the father of Abraham and of Nahor, and they served other gods, meaning they worshipped idols. Then I took your father Abraham from beyond the river and led him through all the land of Canaan and made his offspring many. Then I brought your fathers out of Egypt, and you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued your fathers with chariots and horsemen to the Red Sea. Then I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived on the other side of the Jordan. They fought with you, and I gave them into your hand. Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness. And we'll stop with that there. Read the whole thing. It will do in my 1960s mentality. It'll blow you away. So Abram has armed his 318 trained servants. This tells us a couple things about Abraham. He's prepared. Again, are you prepared? That's the teaching. Are you prepared? Well, I don't have anybody. I got a gun. I carry a 40. Well, great. So you're prepared that way. Are you prepared prayerfully? What the real warrior is not the weapon. It's who the weapon is, not what the weapon is. So Abram, armed with 318 trained servants, he demonstrates the great wealth of Abram, his trained servants, so they were training all the time, much like the Navy SEALs, so they were prepared to go. So Abram pursues Lot's captors as far as Dan. And then we hit verses 15 and 17. So Abram divides himself against them, he and his servants by night, and smote them and pursued them to Hobah. So we see this, he divides his group and then he attacks them at night. So what do you think's going on? These guys have wiped everybody out. How are these guys responding. Do they even think anybody's coming from the backside? They wiped everybody out down there. So who's coming on their backside? They don't expect anybody coming, so they're partying. They're up late. And Abram goes, all right, boys, half of y'all go over there, the other half of y'all go over here. And when I say hit it, we go. And so he does exactly that. They go in and they take over and they slaughter 5 kings. They slaughter 5 kings. Not just beat them and they ran. Well, God slaughtered 5 kings. But Abram's guys come out and they do their deal. So, and he brought back all the goods and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods and the women also and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Kedorlaomer and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. So Kedorlaomer was thought to be invincible, probably living on his own, I'm pretty good. But he was slaughtered by 318 soldiers of God. He was slaughtered by 318 soldiers of God. Jump down to verse 17. The king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Kedorlaomer. So we get the king of Sodom. I'm running behind on my stuff here. So the king of Sodom comes out. Where was the king of Sodom? Why was he coming out of Sodom? What had happened to him? He got defeated by the 5 kings. So he ran to the hills, and then when it was all clear, he went back to his kingdom. So he comes out to meet him because Abram comes in and he's got all the women, all the children, all the booty. Everything is there, and Abram's got it. Now this is big. This is really big. The king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Kedorlaomer and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, Melchi is the Hebrew word for my king. Melchi. Zedek, or Zedek, depending on how you want to pronounce it, I believe it's Zedek. Zedek is righteousness. It means righteous. And so this is the king of righteousness. He is also the king of Salem. Guess where Salem's at today? Israel. Jerusalem. That's pretty exciting. It's like, wait a second. The king of Salem? This is the king of Jerusalem? The place where God put his hand and said, I will live here? I'm getting chills. I hope you are too. The king of Sodom went out to meet him, and the kings were with him. And he says, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. Now, some people would question if he would have to bring forth a lot of bread and wine to feed the armies that came out. So some Bible scholars believe he actually did that. He brought the bread and wine, and he fed them all because they were famished. Others believe it was sort of this is my take on it from scholars, is that it was more of a communion ceremony, more like we do when we do our communion. The breaking of the bread and the wine. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. And he was the priest, watch this, of the Most High God, El Elyon. Now look at the names of this guy. This is so good. And blessed, and Abraham, the possessor of, I got to find where I'm at. There's no numbers on this. And he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him, speaking of Abram, and said, blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered your enemies into your hand. Who is getting the credit? Is Abram, who went out with his 318 guys, is he getting the credit? Not from the priest of the Most High God. Not from the King of righteousness. Not from the king of Jerusalem, the king of Salem. He's not getting that from him. He's getting, you're blessed by the hand of the Most High God, whom I serve as priest and king. So how many priests do you know that are kings? Saul tried to do that, and what happened to him? Samuel comes up and goes, "Oh, time out. What are you doing? You've taken on something that doesn't belong to you. You're not a priest and a king. There's one priest and king, Yeshua HaMashiach. This guy is priest and king of Salem, the king of righteousness." And Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have lifted up my hand to the Lord and the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth." So he repeats him, "that I will not take from a thread even to a shoelace, and I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, and let them take what their portion is." Historically, if you were part of the battle, and when you left, you got part of the spoils. You got a percentage of it. What does Abram, what does he say? The king of Sodom comes out, he says, "Hey, give me the people, you take all the spoils." And he goes, "Nope, I don't want anything. I don't want a thing, lest you would say." Who is the king of Sodom? Is he a righteous man? He refuses. He refuses to take anything from the wicked king. I refuse to let you say that you, as a devout heathen, will make God's child better off. You cannot. I won't take a thing. Give these guys all they want. And then we have another meeting. We got to meet Melchizedek. We got to meet him. Got to meet him. So we meet. Oh, I went too fast. Sorry, I'm getting excited. Be excited with me. So the king of Sodom returns from the pits where he had fled. He meets Abraham on his return. And then we are introduced to the most amazing character named Melchizedek. My King Zedek, my King righteous, or my righteous King. So Abraham meets my righteous King. So his credentials, the my righteous King, is first, King of righteousness, then King of Salem, King of peace. Salem is Shalom, King of peace, Shalom. Salem is equated with Jerusalem, with Jerusalem. He's the priest of the Most High God. We said he's El Elyon. Time prevents me from going through, but here's a reference for you. Hebrews chapter 7, verses 1 through 10 is a marvelous explanation of who this is. I'm going to read just a small portion of it. For Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God. This is Hebrews chapter 7. The writer of Hebrews is explaining who this is that met with Abraham. This is critical. This is likely, from my perspective anyway, from what I've seen in my research, you have to do your own research. This is another theophany of Jesus Christ before he became a man. I believe that. I see that, and I've looked at and I'm not a Bible scholar by any stretch of the imagination. It is so logical and so right just by the names. But do your research. Do your research. Look at Hebrews chapter 7, verses 1 through 10. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a tenth part of all, first being by interpretation king of righteousness, and after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace, without a father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abides a priest continually. Now consider how great this man was, to whom even the patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils. So here's Abraham with everything that he's got. And the first thing he does is he says, my 3 buddies here that helped me fight, those guys get their share. And Melchizedek, the priest of the Most High God, he gets 10%. I want nothing. So he gives the 10%, he gives the tithe to Melchizedek. He pays tithes to Melchizedek. So some Hebrew scholars believe that Melchizedek could be, if he were human, he could be Shem. They believe the Jewish picture is Shem because Shem was still alive 35 years after Abraham dies. So it's pretty interesting. At least that's what the scholars have. So verses 18 through 20, Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. They have their communion, if you will. And then in verses 21 through 24, the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons. And what does he say? Not interested. You keep it. And then who does Abram honor? So here's the thing. When something good happens in your life and my life, who gets the credit? When you do something good, when something turns out right, something you've prayed through, are you singing the praises? Are you like Abram, where you're saying, I don't want anything from the world. I don't want anything. I want to honor my God. I want to honor God with my life. I want to honor God with everything that I have. And I want to be prepared. So Abram is clear in his victory in these regards. Number 1, who is responsible for it? He's very clear. Number 2, who deserves the reward and who is to be honored. And then number 3, God's hand is not shortened. Now watch this. God's hand is not shortened, nor will it be shortened by you and I accepting gifts from a pagan world that we live in. God's hand will not be shortened, but we will not experience the hand of God that could be used. Remember we said that one of the things that was amazing about Abraham is Abraham's faith allowed God to be seen on how he worked through Abraham's life by all the nations around him. Abraham's faith allowed God to use Abraham. And in this card, what Abraham is saying, what I would that you and I would leave here tonight is, I don't want anything to do with the world. I have to live here. I'll share Christ with you. But what's really important, and I gather this from Abraham, is God's hand is not shortened that I need to take anything that the world offers me. Now, I earn a wage. We want that. That's good. That's earned. But we don't need, I'm going to stop there. Let God be your judge and check it out. Look at, before you do anything, look at James chapter 3 and follow his outline. Good, acceptable, peaceful, without hypocrisy, then you do it. Father God in heaven, thank you for this marvelous, marvelous, marvelous story of redemption and your redemption, that you redeem us. You sent Christ to redeem us. We want nothing from the world other than to live here and to share your truth with a world that some listen, some don't, but we're going to try to tell them all. Lord, give us opportunities to share the gospel, and most importantly, Lord, that we would live the gospel, that we would live as Abraham lived. And we ask this, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.